All right, welcome back to the Logan Show. Today with me, probably one of the most highly revered guests that we've had on the show, at least in quite some time. It's the one and only Charlie Starr from Blackberry Smoke. Charlie, what's going on, man?
Oh, I'm just sitting over here, wasting some time until I get to talk to you.
Hey, well, I would argue that talking to me is also probably a waste of time.
No, I'm glad to see you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we could make this work. Thank you for coming on. You know, it's crazy. Whenever I do these, I don't know that I've ever seen so many people praise a band or a musician like I have with yourself and Blackberry Smoke. Obviously, music's very subjective and the fans are very opinionated, but normally whenever I'm watching videos and researching for a guest, whether it's another interview they've done or it's live footage or whatever, you know, obviously there's fans in the comments, but a lot of it too is like, oh, fuck that guy, or this band has sucked ever since whatever, this album or that member changed, blah, blah, blah. But with you and Blackberry Smoke, I mean, it really does not matter what I'm watching, whether it's an interview with you or it's just live footage. I mean, everybody is like, Charlie's my guitar hero. He's a phenom. Blackberry Smoke is the greatest band of the last 20 years. It's really incredible, the love and the passion that your fan base has for you. The things that you guys have been able to cultivate from your fans is really incredible.
Well, I'm extremely appreciative because the alternative would suck. Yeah, being appreciated is easy to appreciate. Well, and I know if you want to get some. If you want to hear some people talk shit, you can always go on our Facebook page. That's where all the shit gets talked.
Do people actually talk shit about the band though, for real, or is it more just like, God, I wish they would do this, or there's nobody out there that's like, oh my God, fuck Blackberry Smoke, right?
Oh yeah, there are. I mean, you know, what did Cat Williams say? If you don't have 4 or 5 haters immediately, you're doing something wrong.
This is true.
So that's the people that bark loudest and first, you know, are always the one like, this sucks. You guys suck. I hate you. And then that's the nature of social media, I guess. But for the most part, you know, I would say that we have a nice little community over there, and they'll fight amongst people will fight amongst themselves over things that don't even matter, which is the sort of the nature of the business. But what do you do? Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I do frequently see people say is that, you know, that they never thought any band could ever come close to them for, you know, like the Almond Brothers, and which I would imagine has to be an incredible thing to hear. But I was reading that I was reading an article that aside from anyone in the Almond Brothers camp, that you've played Dwayne Allman's 57 gold top Les Paul more than anybody else, which is an incredible thing to be able to say. How does that happen, and how did you first get connected with that camp?
Well, that's an honor. Somebody told me that not long ago too. I think it was in maybe a Guitar World interview. But Richard Brandt is a great friend, and he's the curator of the Big House Museum, the Almond Brothers Museum in Macon, Georgia, and that guitar lived there for a long time, and he would bring it out, you know, and he would get permission from the guy who owns it now to let certain people play it, and I was fortunate enough to be in that group. So I actually went with him. It was about a year before COVID. I think it was in 19, and he called and said, "You want to go with me to Birmingham to Metallica? James Hetfield is going to play the gold top." And so I did, and went down and met James and Kirk, and they were lovely folks. And their guitar tech, Chad Zama, she's great. And so James was playing the guitar, and then Kirk came in, and I don't know what I wasn't thinking. I don't know why I'd forgotten that Kirk owns Greenie, you know, Peter Green's Les Paul. And he said, "Do you want to play Greenie?" And I said, "Yes." And to which point he turned to his tech and said, "Would you go get Greenie?" And he did, and brought it back. And we passed Greenie around. And so, yeah, none of this is ever lost on me. You know, I was fucking blown away and still am. And just the other day, and just the other night, rather, in Canandaigua, New York, Jason Newsted came out.
Oh, no kidding! Wow.
Yeah, we met through a mutual friend, and he contacted me, and he and his wife came to the show, and we hung out for hours. And I told him, I said, I feel like I've known you for 20 years. And he's just such a great dude. I told him, I said, that Metallica was the second rock concert I ever saw in 1989. And it might still be the loudest. Motorhead in Atlanta in 95 probably is. But that Metallica show was unhinged. And he said, oh yeah, I mean, that was before the age of DB limits and people taking it easy on you at front of house. And he said, oh, I for years watched our front of house guy just take people apart. Anyway, I said, well, here I am. We're still talking about it, you know? So it was very impactful. And I don't know why I'm rambling now, Logan, but
no. A couple things to that point. One, I will say that I saw Motorhead. I mean, I'm a younger guy, so I never had the chance to see some of these bands back in their heyday. But I did see Motorhead once, probably, I don't know, 12 years ago or something. And everybody always says that is the loudest concert that you could ever find yourself at, would be a Motorhead show. And I went, and obviously they killed it, but I did walk away a little disappointed. I was like, God, my ears are not ringing like I thought they would. It was it was pretty quiet, but I it wasn't a Motorhead headline show. It was a Mayhem Fest. It was a festival tour, so it was Slipknot, Slayer, and Motorhead. But they were relatively quiet, which was a disappointment. But obviously, great show, and I'm glad I could see them before. Lemmy died. But the other thing with Jason Newsted, I just saw that he's selling like over 60 of his guitars.
Yeah, his Reverb store.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that he was such a collector, and he has a massive collection that he amassed over decades of touring the world. You know, that's one thing he mentioned. We were talking about it, and because I have a much smaller collection of instruments than he does, but he said, I didn't just buy this stuff online. This is back, his collecting started pre-internet. So he said, I actually was going to these places and buying these guitars, whether it's Indonesia or Canada or, Marseille or wherever it might be, or anywhere, obviously in the United States. He said I wasn't, buying these on eBay and having them shipped to me. So he said, each one of them that I look at, we were laughing about, he said, there was obviously the criteria of what instruments to get rid of was a tough thing to wrap his brain around, because I said, well, I'm a hoarder. It's hard for me to get rid of anything too. So I can dig that.
Well, yeah, and he's getting rid of, some classics. I mean, the ones that he did the And Justice for All tour on, the Black Album tour. So it's that really was a crazy thing to see. But one other miscellaneous sort of thing before we really get into it, I just want to mention this, is that I'm sure you're aware of this. Tom Petty country tribute album, Petty Country, came out, I don't know, like a month and a half ago or something. But there's no Blackberry Smoke. It's predominantly mainstream country or pop country artists, not all, but most. But I really feel like they fucked up by not having Blackberry Smoke on there, because not only do I feel like the band really embodies the spirit of someone like Petty so much better than a lot of the people that appear on the record, no discredit to them, but there's that. And then obviously you guys have done covers. You Got Lucky and Listen to Her Heart. Were you guys even approached to do that or be a part of it in any way?
No. And I guess, I can't give a reason why or why not, I guess, we didn't get a memo.
I just feel like that would be a perfect, opportunity for you guys to have appeared on that. I'm sure you would feel the same way.
Yeah, it would have been cool. I wasn't even aware of it until I actually went to, there was a release event for it and I've got lots of friends that are on it, and went over there, and great folks,
Sure.
Tom Petty's daughter Adria was there, who put it together with George Drakoulias, or some of it anyway. And but yeah, that would have been cool. But we did that thing. We recorded an acoustic cover of "You Got Lucky" with Amanda Shires. It's been 5 years ago now, 6 years ago. So all these, I think most of the recordings on that thing are new.
Yeah.
So maybe we're just old, Logan.
Well, Mike Campbell, his band, the Dirty Knobs, that would be a great show. It's Blackberry Smoke and Mike Campbell.
Yeah, I would love that. I had friends that know Mike also. I've never met him. The only Heartbreakers I ever met were Steve Ferroni and Benmont. And I don't say only because they're fantastic musicians and people. I got to actually jam with Steve we were out on tour with Government Mule, and Steve was a guest that night. It was in California, and got to play a Little Feat song with Steve and Mule, and that was great. Lovely fellow. Benmont I met back in the 1900s. We were the band previous to Blackberry Smoke. We were making a record. Myself, Brit, and Richard Turner were in the band, and Benmont came to the studio and played keys on every song.
Oh, no kidding! Wow.
I got to sit and watch him work, and I don't know if he remembers that or not, but it was fantastic.
Are there recordings of that anywhere out there?
Yeah, it was a band called Buffalo Nickel that made one record for Universal, and it wasn't our. It was the band leader it was his record basically. He was a solo artist, and he just called it Buffalo Nickel, but it was his gig. We were just sort of his band, But it was still a great experience. I was young. I was in my 20s.
So you were just playing guitar in it. You weren't singing on it.
I sang harmony vocals.
I see.
But played the guitar on it. And Mike Campbell actually played a couple of solos on that record as well. It was produced by Danny Korchmer, of Jackson Browne fame, and good record.
I'll have to check it out. I feel like Mike Campbell is a rather underrated guitar player. I guess when you're in a band, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, I mean, obviously everybody just kind of gravitates towards Tom, obviously, but Mike is a phenomenal guitarist.
Yeah, he's most of my guitar player friends, or if not all of us, know that he is the king. He is of serving the song. All of his solos you can sing. I mean, he's really unique in so many ways too, that he couldn't overplay if he tried. He's got a specific touch and feel that, or he's the perfect guitar player for that band. Nobody else could do that. Nobody else could do what Mike does in that band.
100%. But moving on to some Blackberry Smoke, I was watching a video of actually I think it was at that Canandaigua show over the weekend that you said, Jason Newsted was at. You did a new song that you wrote with Cody Jinx. I think it's called "In My Blood," which was the first time I believe that song had ever been performed. I'm a little bit more of a rock guy. I do like Cody Jinx, but I feel like especially at this point, the lines between country music, especially the more old school sort of outlaw kind of sound, and southern rock, that the lines between that are so blurred that I feel like it's hard to say you're a fan of one but not the other. And I would imagine that being able to ride that line of genre crossover is at least part of what's been so instrumental to the success of Blackberry Smoke.
Yeah, well, it does get blurry, and Cody himself, I think he comes from a metal background when he was younger.
Yeah.
But like so many others, I was talking to Jason about this, and he's like, even the guys in Slayer and Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax and all those bands, they didn't grow up with that music because that music didn't exist. So they listened to all different types of music in their youth. So whether it might be, Waylon Jennings or ABBA or, it was Jason was talking about a party that I think Kerry King threw and I had people come up and sing, and somebody sang an ABBA song, and he's like, I fucking love this," And so I don't know. Musicians are not the ones that are so genre obsessed. Seems like it's other people who shouldn't be. Maybe it's the people who are trying to market it. It's like most people I know might listen to Outkast today and Motorhead tomorrow. It's music.
Well, and I remember hearing you say in another interview that like when Led Zeppelin put out Led Zeppelin 3, for example, it was just like, hey, here's another record. It's not, hey, here's a bunch of acoustic songs or any band, being Rolling Stones. I think you also brought up doing hey, here's a country song. No, it's just, hey, here's another Stones tune. Check it out. If you like it, you like it.
Yeah, that's what we grew up with album rock, if you want to call it that, which is that's the idea that we subscribe to, is put together a collection of good songs, and it doesn't have to have a theme. We're not making concept records. It's just a collection of songs, and hopefully they're all different. And Brit Turner and I used to talk about that all the time, starting from the beginning of the band. It's like, well, there's really only one band who can get away with an album full of songs that sound alike, and that's AC/DC. And nobody complains about it because there's nothing they complain about. Yeah. And they can, they are the exception to the rule. Everyone else, however, better make records that have some variety, or I'm going to skip over some songs.
Yeah, of course.
And Zeppelin and the Stones kind of taught us how to do that. They could have, a song like Gallows Pole, or a song like The Immigrant Song, or a song like Hot Dog, and it could all, it can be the same band. For some reason, when we started to do that or try to do that, people would get confused, people that were writing about it anyway, and say, oh, I remember reading one review, I think it was from the UK, that said, this album is schizophrenic, to say the least. And I thought, what the fuck's wrong with that? That means that there's variety. There's something there to keep you engaged.
That's what you want.
Oh, this song's funky. Oh, this song's not. Oh, this song's heavy, or this song's laid back and countrified. Even Skinner did it. They would put Ballad of Curtis Lowe, which is my favorite Skinner song ever, on the same record as Working for the MCA, which is a threat, basically, to the record company.
Well, to me, that's what makes certain songs and bands timeless. You look at a band like the Stones, for example, who by the way, I just saw last month live, and it was just, what a fucking incredible show. My God. But, and obviously that band's got a little bit of everything. And I was reading an article with you from a few years ago where you said that Honky Tonk Women is a song that you wish you had written because, when you first heard it as a kid, you're like, well, this is the same thing as country music. It's just louder. And I think that's what helps create the longevity for certain bands and timeless classics, as cringy and corny as that sounds.
Well, that's it. I mean, my youngest son is 10, and I saw him fall in love with that song and Jumpin' Jack Flash and Street Fighting Man, same as the same way I did when I was young, because it's just so good, and it sticks to your ribs. The choruses are memorable. Same thing for him. Oasis. I put on Oasis one day, and he's like, I love this. I'm like, yeah, you do, because you remember it instantly.
100%.
That's what I like. When people, I like songs that I want to sing again right away. I was talking to my friend Keith Nelson once, and
I was just about to bring him up.
He produces some young acts, and he's like, I have to try to instill into younger writers, like, hey, you know what? I mean, if you want to have a song that's 9 minutes long that never repeats anything, sure, by all means, go ahead. But I come from the school of, you're going to want to go ahead and repeat the catchy thing over and over again.
Well, I was just about to bring up Keith Nelson, which for those that don't know was the original guitar player of Buckcherry, and has co-written a handful of songs on I think your last 3 records, including this year's "Be Right Here." And Buckcherry is another band that sort of had a bit of a crossover success with that song "Sorry." It was on the rock stations and it was on the top 40 and all that stuff, but. Anyways, yeah, I know he's done a bit of writing and producing since he left Buckcherry back in 2017. But when I realized that he had written some songs with you, I guess that really was a collaboration that I wasn't necessarily expecting to see. But your relationship with Keith actually goes back to the 90s when Buckcherry were just first starting out and they were touring and they came through Atlanta.
Yeah, I think 97 or so. I had a good friend who there was a rock and roll bar in Atlanta called Nine Live Saloon, and it was the place to go if you were wanting to play or hear rock and roll. And it was in this funky little enclave in Atlanta called Little Five Points, which was kind of known as a skater punk, sort of hippie, sort of kind of the island of misfit toys. Right there in Atlanta. And so I remember when it opened, I helped open it with a good friend named Ted LaThang, musically that is. And we were like, why would we want to come here? This is nothing but like punk and ska this is weird. Why would we put a rock bar here? And our crazy friend at the time opened the bar. And lo and behold, it became the place to go in Atlanta. Was in there one night, and we started it from the ground up with my cover band. With my friend Ted, we played every night, and people started coming in. And Andre from Outkast came in one night.
Oh wow!
The dudes from Matchbox 20 came in one night. It was crazy. Always a party, like all night parties. Bikers came in. Lemmy came in there. It was fucking awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway. I was at work in a body shop one day, about an hour away where I lived, and Ted called and said he booked the bands there. And he called and said, I got a band coming in on Sunday from LA. You need to come down here and listen to this cassette single that they sent. It's part of the promo pack. He said, they sound like Guns N' Roses. I said, oh, okay. He couldn't send me the song then. There was no internet.
Sure.
To speak of. And so I drove down after work and he put Lit Up on, and I was like, holy shit, this is rock and roll, And so they came in on that Sunday and they played for 5 people. Ted and I were 2 of the people. And Keith and I hit it off immediately about guitars. And also we opened for them, my cover band. And they got up and did 30 Days in the Hole with us for the other 3 people that were in the bar. But what they were doing this Southeastern residency. It was like a figure 8. They were doing like Atlanta, Charlotte, Greenville, down to, whatever, Birmingham. So they played every week. They were in a van. Like there was 4 of them. And the first Sunday they played, there was 5 people. The second Sunday, there was 50 people. The next Sunday, there was 1,000 people. It was nuts to watch how much people loved them. They really hit a nerve. People were coming in with homemade T-shirts by the 3rd Sunday.
No kid, of Buckcherry.
No kidding.
Wow.
Buckcherry. So Keith was blown away by that. I think Atlanta was the one that they really caught on quickly. And Ted did that. He was really promoting them, And he didn't. Them being great had a lot to do with it, but
sure.
He really helped. Keith gave him a guitar to thank him for the help, But anyway, I made this short story long, but Keith and I became friends then, and we've remained best friends all these years. And we started writing songs when he left the band, and we continue to. We just talked to him yesterday. He's one of the good ones.
I've met him once before, and no, he was a great guy. It was right. I guess it was probably one of the last tours that he did. with Buckcherry. But no, that's crazy. That whole story was insane. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I went to see them. I didn't see them for a little while back then, because they broke up the first time, before
they really broke with 15, the 15 album.
Yeah. Yeah. So they had success, and then they kind of fell apart, and then came back and had even bigger success. So, anyway, good for them and him. And I've always loved that band, and I love him dearly. And writing songs with him is really a natural experience because we love the same shit. And it's not hard, we just get we're never in the same room. I only ever see him when we get out to California. I just saw him a couple of months ago, but we just write, long distance.
So when you're co-writing songs with people, how exactly does that work? Is it like hey, let's just get together and jam and see what happens? Or is it like, hey, well, I'm kind of working on this little thing, and I think, Keith or whoever else would have some great input for this. This kind of has their vibe to it. How does that whole thing come about? Because it's not just Keith. I mean, you guys work with a number of other people that you write songs with. Yeah.
Well, it started, I only have a small group of people. Early in the Blackberry Smokes career, it usually comes to pass in bands that there will be one or two guys that are the songwriters. There are very few bands where everybody is truly a songwriter. That's why, you look on liner notes down through the years, you usually see like Jagger Richards, or Lennon and McCartney, even though George Harrison did write a lot of his own songs. But bands that have that everybody's a writer would get a little schizophrenic. It just kind of shakes down that way, and so in our case, I'm really the only person who writes songs in the band. And then our piano player, Brandon Steele, he started really getting involved as a writer. Everybody's not interested in writing, is my point.
Sure.
So early on, I was told, hey, you should get together with this person or this writer or this person, and that part of it in the beginning was the Nashville thing, which I'm not really a part of. I've never been really good at writing under pressure or like punching the clock and being like, okay, I'm writing songs today. I'm not good at that. Some people are really good at it, and I'm not one of them. But I just kind of only write when I'm feeling inspired.
Yeah.
But so back from that period, then when I was going to Nashville from time to time, I met a handful of people who I still write with to this day, which is Travis Meadows, who I really connected with early on. We understand each other. We're coming from the same kind of background. Keith is one of them. I really like Brent Cobb. Wrote a song with him. Randy Houser, he's another country artist.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's not a long list of people, because it can be kind of awkward it's very awkward to walk into a room with somebody you don't know and write a song.
For sure, I would imagine.
To me, it's odd anyway. But so it usually happens these days, and thanks to COVID, where we all started writing all these songs because we were all sitting at home, couldn't tour. So we would get on FaceTime like you and I are on now, and or Zoom, and like, thanks to technology, you can write a song with somebody that's in Tokyo.
Yeah, you start passing ideas back and forth.
Yeah, and that's what happened with Cody Jinx the other day. We were actually on tour together, and he's like, we should write a song together. And I said, yeah, I would love that. And so we kind of, that was a little different. We banged it out over the course of a few weeks when we would get together. And we would get together on the phone back and forth. And then we finally got together in person and finished it. But it's such a unique experience, writing songs with other people. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not, sometimes you don't finish a song and you're like, okay, I give up. This sucks.
Have you ever like came back to a song like years down the road? I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I've heard, people talk about, well, this song became a massive song, but it took years and years because maybe Dream On was one of them. I don't remember, but they had part of it and then just could never figure out where to go with it. And then, 5-6 years later, I don't know, you just kind of come back to it and suddenly it dawns on you like, oh, you know what? This is what I need to do here.
I've got several of those. Well, they're not big hits, but they're songs that were put away, because it might have lacked something. Something about the hook or missing a bridge or missing something,
Yeah.
Incomplete. And other than I'll do that quite often, other than beat it to death and be like, no, I have to, this has to be a song that's done. If I hit the wall, I'll just be like, I'm going to put that away. And eventually it'll, maybe it'll see the light of day. Maybe it'll work itself out. Maybe not, I think most people probably have those that they come back around to, they're like, oh, you know what? Now I got it. Probably happens a lot.
That song with Cody Jinx, is that ever going to be officially released?
I bet so. Yeah, we already talked about going in and recording it. And that was pretty fearless on his part. That was his headlining show the other night, and when we got there, we hadn't seen each other in a couple of weeks. And he said, "You want to play that song tonight?" I was like, it's not done, right? And we got on the bus and basically finished it up. And neither one of us had ever, played it or sung it all the way through. And it's like, well, we better rehearse it. And we did. And it was very loose, but it was, I love that about him. And anybody who's like him, that it's like, hey man, this is music. It's not brain surgery and warts and all. Here you go. Dave Cobb's that way. He's like, the focus on perfection is what's killing music. You can't, quantizing drums and click tracks and making things, tuning vocals and making things perfect. It makes it so robotic. It takes all the humanity out of it. And, if you put on a Zeppelin record, like if you separate the tracks, stuff is rough. It doesn't sound perfect. It sounds like human beings doing the best they can. And that's what makes it sound good to our ears. Even the slightest little imperfections sound good. There's all kind of videos on YouTube of people who like auto-tuned Bohemian Rhapsody, and it sucks. You're like, oh, it's not supposed to be dead nuts perfect.
No, and that's what makes it rock and roll. And I just, like I said, I'm a younger guy, so I'm probably way behind the 8 ball on this. But I just found out, in the last few months about the song "Hey Jude" from the Beatles, that there's a bit in there where you can hear Paul McCartney say "fuck."
Yeah, fucking hell. Yeah, that's what he says.
Yeah.
He hits a bad note.
Yeah, and I was reading about it, and John Lennon insisted that they keep it in the song.
Leave it in there.
Yeah. And
if you can hear it really good with earbuds in. You go, it's right after when the second time he says, when you begin, I think you hear fucking hell.
which is awesome. And, nowadays, things like that, or even just, a bad note in a song. I mean, it doesn't stay in, and everything is very, pieced together these days. And that's why I think, I'm personally not so much into a lot of the newer rock bands and newer things like that, because it's, I was a DJ on country radio for a long time, and some of the songs are okay, some I like better than others, but at some point a lot of it just becomes, it's just very formulaic and just very, I don't know, a lot of it just feels forced, and I think music is missing a lot of that organicness and the storytelling and things like that.
I was really blown away the first time somebody told me about Zach Bryan, which was a couple of years ago, and I was getting on an airplane, and from time to time I'll talk to a friend and be like, what are you listening to? Searching for something new that's exactly what you're talking about, something that excites you and is not formulaic and not, glossy. And a buddy of mine was like, listen to this dude from Oklahoma. It's really an interesting story, and he's blowing up, and that's always a good story when somebody's blowing up. That's great.
Yeah.
And I put on I think it was one of his demos that that, like, everything he's ever recorded is on streaming services, like from the very first TikTok video he made.
Oh, wow.
I put it on. I was like, wow, these dudes their guitars aren't even in tune. I fucking love this. This is like, it sounds like it's recorded in his bedroom. And that kind of thing is like, okay, this will never get old. People learning how to do it, and having that passion for, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write songs. I'm going to play this instrument. I'm completely shocked that it can happen these days that way. Like, okay, this bedroom recording is going to be released and it's going to blow up. That was extremely inspiring to me. I just thought that proves that it's not going to die,
Well, and I'm not familiar with his music. I know who he is, but I haven't heard the music. But I believe now he's like doing stadiums. I mean,
he is. And now another point that was made by another friend, Brian Henneman from the Bottle Rockets, wonderful guitar player, singer. He said to me the other day, he's a little older than I am. I'm 50. He may be 60. But he said, man, I feel like the era of getting in a van and touring, blood, sweat, and tears, eating bologna, the sacrifice is kind of dying. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I guess it's social media is the way that people can somehow circumvent that experience and go and then start playing stadiums. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, there is a part of the equation that's got to be there, though, and they have to write songs that connect with people. And far be it from me to say what's good or bad when something like that happens. It may not be, I may not like Taylor Swift, but I can't deny that she puts that many people in seats because they like her songs. It's not just because she's cute; it's because they like her fucking music. So that's an undeniable fact. But it was really interesting to hear him say that. It's like, okay, well, there are so many people out there now that, thanks to this handheld computer that we all have, they get to skip the boot camp that we all went through,
100%. You can record anything and upload it right now.
Yeah. Nobody's fault. It's just, they're lucky to live in this day and age and not the one we did, where we had bags of drugs and trying not to get pulled over by the cops, It's fascinating to me. I watched my own oldest son learn how to play the guitar really well without having to go to a person and take a lesson, but it was learning how, well, he's got talent. First of all, he's got a good ear, but he's got a billion lessons at his fingertips thanks to the internet.
Well, so he's also got you too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He didn't come to me.
Oh.
He wasn't interested until much, much older than I was. He was probably 17 when he finally was like, you know what? I think I want to learn how to play the guitar. And I was on tour. And the next thing I know, he's like, hey, guess what I learned how to play? Bark at the Moon. I was like, huh? And he's like, yeah, I found a video of Jake E. Lee teaching it. So, when I was his age, we just sat and painstakingly listened to Van Halen records. We couldn't watch a video of Eddie saying, here's how you play Eruption.
Well, I know a lot of those tab books that they would put out back in the day too. There's a guy on YouTube. I think it's The Art of Guitar, and he looks at some of these older tab books and shows you how wildly
how wrong they are. Yeah. I bought some. I never could. I didn't have the patience. Tablature is just, it's a lot. It's tedious. I think I bought the Paranoid album tab when I was probably 11 or 12, maybe. Or I didn't buy it. My mom did, but it's like, that's not how it goes.
It's crazy that so many of those were out and that they would even get published being so incorrect. But I want to jump into your upbringing for a bit. But before that, one last collaboration I wanted to bring up, which is sort of strange, was the one with Aldo Nova, which is back in like 2007 or something. I don't even think it was ever officially released, and then he put it out on his YouTube channel. I think the song's called "I've Been There." But anyways, I heard that you were initially opposed doing. You did not want to do that in the beginning, and then it all happened, and it turned into a great story.
I don't know if I was opposed to it. I don't know who might have said that. That was a writing weekend, if I remember correctly. I was not sober at that point. It was great to meet Aldo. He was a trip. But we went in as a band also, which is weird. That might have been that was probably weird for him too. Like, that's a little bit overwhelming, to be faced with 5 dudes looking at you. And so it wound up basically he and I getting guitars and going through this stuff, and anyway, I remember we wrote a few songs. I vaguely remember that one. And you'd write the songs and then make demos of them, like in a little Pro Tools demo studio. And it was odd, but I think I enjoyed it, if I remember correctly. He had great stories also about working with Bon Jovi and Celine Dion and all these people, I remember that song being pretty cool. Sounded a lot like I don't even remember, but I remember thinking it was pretty cool. I don't think anybody ever recorded it. And that kind of thing actually wasn't necessarily for Blackberry Smoke as much as it was like writing songs for a publishing company that somebody else might cut.
Oh, I see.
That's kind of weird too. But I've got Jesse Dupree from Jackal. He recorded or produced our first album, and one of my best friends, and he taught us how to tour back in 2000, 2001. He was so such a good teacher by example anyway. But he would tell me about going to these writing retreats in France with Ted Nugent and Carole King and all these people, really strange bedfellows, And he said, you're all sleeping in this chateau somewhere in the mountains and writing songs all day, and same thing, like a song factory. And he told me a story. He said each person had your own little recording room, Pro Tools studio. And he said Ted Nugent went walking by one day, and he said I had my door open and I had written this song and it was kind of rocking and I had it blasting. And he said Ted bebops by and sticks his head back and goes, "What's that, Jesse?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a song I just wrote." He goes, "Sounds pretty good. All it needs is a solo from Uncle Ted." And he's like, "Okay." He goes, "What key is it in?" He said, "E." He goes, "Ha, Ted's key."
Well, when I realized that there was such a big connection between Blackberry Smoke and Jackal, I was a little surprised, and I love Jackal, especially that first album is incredible. And I've met Jesse one time, and I used to be a promoter, and so I did a Jackal show, and that guy he was super nice, but he's also, he is over the top. Just
big personality.
He is. I remember we did the show in this 500. It was a 500 cap club, and just a small kind of shithole, hole in the wall type place, and we had to take down the LED lights and get these old school can lights, and we had to bring a spotlight in, and when they're loading their gear in, it is like these fucking huge amps, and just balls to the wall,
Yes.
That, I don't know him personally, but he appears to be the exact same way in real life as he is on stage. It's not an act.
No, he is, he's like first of all, he would fight anyone at the drop of a hat. He's a fierce individual, not mean, just he fights for what he believes in or what he loves. Not afraid of anybody. Probably kick anybody's ass. At number 2, he's like a mixture between like a televangelist and a professional wrestling manager and Bon Scott, all rolled into one. He has the gift of gab. He's got that screaming vocal that's it's exciting to hear somebody do that, and he can still do it. He still does it as well as he did 30 years ago. And he's a really good friend. Always has been to me, but he's extremely driven and he's just a character. He'll never stop. You know, he's like always busy and dedicated to what he's doing. And yeah, everything you just mentioned about the lights and about Spotlight and I remember he used to say, he's like, everything goes in every venue, all the production, it never changes. We never go small. You always put everything in there. And he's like, it doesn't matter if you're playing for 500 people or 50,000, you play the same shit.
And the way that you guys got connected was that he had gotten a hold of one of your early demos, right? And then came to a show that you guys were doing in Atlanta at Star Bar. And you didn't know he was coming there. He just randomly shows up. And then that turned into, hey, why don't you come to my studio? And then, hey, why don't you come out and open for Jackal for a month across the U.S.?
Yeah, he and I was a fan already. I'd never met him. Brit and Richard knew him from years before that when he was in a band called PG-13, which then he left and formed or joined Jackal. Jackal was already a band with a different singer. And this is a great point. It's like they would come into Atlanta and play like one of the big rock clubs back then in the late 80s. And because Jackal was from South Carolina, just north of Atlanta, from like Seneca or Anderson, South Carolina. Jesse would come in and they were playing a couple of his songs from his band. And I think that he was like, well, you need me to fucking sing it. And so he did. And they all realized we just created the greatest band ever by having you sing with our band. And the rest was history. But yeah, Britt told me, he's like, hey man, Jesse from Jackal, we had this cassette single we made. It was 2 songs. It was Sanctified Woman and Normal Town, which were 2 of the first songs that I actually wrote Sanctified Woman, and I co-wrote Normal Town with an old friend. I had actually played that in his band from a few years before. But and Britt was like, he wants us to come to his house and talk about this. So we did. And he's got an old Western saloon built into his house. And so we go in there and the swinging doors, and we go in, there's cool shit on the walls, and them playing fucking Madison Square Garden and gold records. And, you know, I was really blown away by it all. And so we're standing there bellied up to his bar drinking PBRs. And he's like, I want to record these songs. We had made demos. And he said, I want to record them. I want to record them correctly. I have a studio just up the hill. And so, yeah. He said, Sanctified Woman, that's the song that he really took to. He said, that song sounds like shortening bread. And I said, wow, it does. Okay. And he goes, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody fucking loves shortening bread. I said, you're right. Yeah. So he had me right then, man. I was like, I love this dude. He's just no bullshit about him, you know. And he, we started, you know, he's like, you got him, how many more songs you got? I said, well, I'm working on it. I got like 6 more. He goes, you need more than that? And over the years, you know, we went and made that first record, and I was the only person who was really writing songs. So I was like, well, I'm doing the best I can, and I hope these are good, you know, and didn't have enough really. So we recorded 2 covers on that debut, Freeborn Man and Another Chance, which was an old bluegrass song, and Another Chance is a Georgia Satellite song. And he told me then, he's like, are you prepared to write an album's worth of music every year? Can you do that? You know, and I was like, there's only one way to find out. Just do it. And he told us then, he's like, you need to, if you're going to do this, because we were already into our 20s and 30s, you know, and he said, you need to quit everything else. Quit your day job. And if you're going to take a swing at this, you know, swing for the fence. And so we did, and here we are.
That's incredible. It's incredible.
I blame him for all of it.
Yeah. You know, the best Jesse story ever, to move on, but it's just so funny. And I don't know, people might take it the wrong way, but I find it to be hilarious, is that at this club, we had a barricade, in front of the stage, because we also had to have like a 6-foot catwalk built, in this fucking club. And so we have the barricade up, and their stage manager, who I think has been with the band since, back in the day, his name's Randy.
Yes.
You know Randy?
I know Randy well.
Yeah, okay. And that was the guy that, he had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth the whole day. And
yes, he did.
Yeah. So he comes up and he's like, "You've got to get rid of this fucking barricade right now." And I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "If the crowd can't see Jesse's boots, he's not fucking playing." And I'm like, good God. I think about that all the time. That was such a good story. It's such a classic moment that I'm so grateful to be there for that.
They had, that's just like scorched earth. Like everybody, like there's two different kinds of shows. Like you could have the show that nobody fucking remembers, and then you got something like that we're still talking about today.
Yep.
I remember doing a show with him. I played on his second solo album. It was he had me play all the guitar on it, and Roman Glick on bass, and Mike Froge on drums, who played with Black Label Society. And we went and did some shows, and Jesse did his thing. It's like playing with Iggy Pop. He runs on stage and he's like got no shirt on, and like he's like lines up covered in blood, and there's just like, it's like, not that bad, but you know what I mean? It's it's an experience. You're obviously gonna see and hear a chainsaw and a shotgun and all that, and then we walked off stage, and there was a young metal band that had opened the show that thought they were hot shit. I forget which city we were in, but we walked off, and he looked, and he's like, "That's how it's fucking done, young man." And I was like, "Yes, it is. That's exactly how it's done." And people are going to leave here, and they're not going to remember who opens.
That's incredible.
Same thing. I saw Prince one time. It was in Louisville, Kentucky. And he obviously is from that similar school as Jesse, not meaning screaming and playing a chainsaw, but that audience is going to remember. Under no circumstances is it going to be a less than 110% experience, and no shoegazing, it's fun. And Prince did that. Went in and was like, and this was a year before he died, and I was still just like, holy shit. Okay, he's an entertainer. That's what he's not. This is not his artsy project. He's a fucking entertainer. That's what he's doing. He's giving people their money's worth.
Well, and the thing with that is like, like I mentioned going to see the Stones recently, and just an incredible show, especially at their age.
Yeah.
And that they're still putting on a show at 80 years old. And a full set, it was like 2 hours long. And then I go see, I'm admittedly, I'm like a diehard Motley Crue fan, right? I love that band. And yeah, it always feels like a little bit of a disappointment, because it does feel like, for one, they don't want to be there. It's simply to make money. And for two, I get it. It's rock and roll. It shouldn't sound perfect, but some bands, it's not just them. There's plenty of bands where it's like, why not even try?
Yeah.
You just, it's like they don't take it seriously. And I think it is insulting to fans when, you go out there and you can go to your bar down the road and see a local band put more effort into their show than a band playing in an arena or a stadium with 50,000 people that, this is like a big nostalgic moment for them, or it's, whatever. These songs mean something to them. And, a lot of these bands just kind of to show up and just, it's just a paycheck.
That shirt you're wearing right there, that was the first show I ever saw in 1988.
Cinderella.
It was the Long Cold Winter Tour.
Oh, and no kidding.
In Columbus, Georgia. And that was exactly what we're talking about. They came out on stage and just wrecked the place. It was so good. They played those hit songs. The crowd sang every word. When they did Gypsy Road, Tom Kiefer split the audience, and he's like, okay, on the left, you're going to sing My Gypsy Road, and you sing Can't Take Me Home, you know? And it was, I'm still talking about it to this day, same thing, same as that Metallica show. The same, I don't know, those dudes are coming from the same school of, we're here to do our thing and be damn good at it.
Well, you know, Cinderella, which I got to see them on probably their last two tours, I would imagine, because it's been a while, and obviously Jeff LaBar passed away a few years ago, and Tom's been doing his solo thing. But you know, even towards the end, I mean, just absolutely crushing it. And I ended up getting to meet the band at the first show, and because we ended up lucky enough to sit next to some lady that grew up with Eric Brittingham, the bass player. So she was like, "Why don't you guys just come backstage?" And I get to meet the band, and great guys, and just phenomenal musicians. And honestly, I think one of the more underrated 80s bands. They get a lot of times lumped in with quote unquote hair bands, but it's, to me, I mean, Cinderella is a lot more Aerosmith than Poison or something. Nothing against Poison, I like Poison, but I mean they're more Aerosmith, and they got that bluesy vibe to them.
Totally. And Tom wrote those songs that just will live forever. The Cinderella and Tesla, those were the two best examples I can think of. And Tom, he's a friend, and he sat in with us at the Ryman several years ago. We did Brown Sugar and Heartbreak Station, and
wow,
it was great. It was fantastic. And we talked about guitar. He's a guitar collector too, and he said, well, back then people listened with their eyes a lot. Back in the era of spandex and hairspray, and I got that. I was like, yeah. There were several bands that I can think of that looked cool, but had no business making a record. And then there were bands like Tesla and Cinderella and Junkyard who they wrote songs that I want to hear right now.
Yeah, 100%. I just saw Tesla recently, and just an incredible band, incredible songs, and definitely a lot different from their peers of the day. But we'll keep this moving. I don't want to take up your whole day here, but I want to go back to your upbringing for a bit, because I know you first got into music from your dad, who would play guitar for you. Play a lot of bluegrass and country and gospel and things like that. And you frequently talk about the wreck of the old 97, which he would play for you, which is about a train derailment back in 1903 or whatever. Hearing songs like that at such a young age, do you think that played a little bit of a role in your songwriting even today? Like, learning so early that, like, wow, music really is, you can use it to tell a story, and it really is the best way to tell a good story.
Yeah, that was it completely. I was fascinated by the songs he sang, because my dad loves story songs. Little Bessie, Knoxville Girl, a lot of murder ballads. The folk music and bluegrass are so full of those songs. Not only love songs, but so many of those are. It's like the white man's blues. All those songs, about death and woe is me kind of things. And then of course it got mixed up in my music with blues, and I was fascinated how I'm like, okay, white people and black people had a lot of the same songs that they would record in a little bit of a different way, just because Irish and European, Celtic and European, Eastern European people were coming and putting their spin on it. But mostly those songs with words, those ballads were coming from English and Celtic folk, and they would have like Sitting on Top of the World that black musicians recorded also, just a little bit different. But both would sometimes even have a fiddle, be a guitar and a fiddle both ways. That always fascinated me. Like, okay, well, that's how the American songbook was born. All these immigrants bringing in their stories and their music. Yeah, I mean, songs are stories, or should be. if they don't have to be, but it helps.
You know, I'm always so fascinated by a great songwriter's point of view on things like, like Wheeler Walker Jr., for example, who has also records produced by Dave Cobb, who did
Yeah.
your last couple, or more in the rock world, a band like Steel Panther. These great songs, when if you take away the lyrics, I mean, they're great songs, but obviously over the top, silly, ridiculous, filthy lyrics. Is it hard for, someone like you who is such a great songwriter, is it hard for you to get into that kind of thing? Or do you have a certain appreciation when there are artists out there that, it is more, they're talented, but they don't exactly take these songwriting seriously, I guess?
No, I think it's great. That's a different thing. It's comedy. So it's just a different take on it, and I love it. It makes me laugh. Sometimes with Wheeler Walker, I'm like, Jesus, that's a great song. I'm like, I mean, he's singing about titties, but it's great. And it sounds great. Like, thanks to Dave, I'm like, wow, the guitar tones and all the tones on it are fantastic. No, I love that. They're doing a great job of making you laugh. They're not I mean, whoever, I don't question their motivation. People do what they want to do, but yeah.
I think you got to have the good, there's other bands out there that do it, but the songs are just kind of, the music is just sort of subpar. And I think the way that makes it work and gives some of these artists like longevity is having, songs that are actually well crafted and well written, and could be, standalone great songs with, traditional lyrics. What I mean?
I think Wheeler probably inspired Dierks Bentley to do that Hot Country Nights thing that he does. Have you seen that? Where
No, I have not.
It's he and his band put on mullet wigs and like glacier glasses, like Oakley sunglasses, and they're basically. And this is several years old now, them doing it. They were kind of poking fun at 90s country a bit. Okay. Early 90s country, all the mullet country, And they had a song called Asphalt. And it's a slow country ballad. It's like talking about a girl in tight jeans. And he goes, "It ain't my fault. It's that asphalt." and we played with him. We've known him for years, but we played with him in Florida, and they take with his normal band, Dierks Bentley, he's a big country superstar,
Of course.
Well, they take a short set break and they come back as those dudes, and they're pretending like they are not Dierks Bentley and his band. It's like a different thing, and it's fucking hilarious.
I'll have to check that out.
They're doing like high karate kicks, and like he's getting mad. They all wear the Garth Brooks, headset microphone, and one dude's got a keytar. And anyway, I love it. Yeah,
that's incredible.
And I would never be any good at doing that kind of thing, but I'm glad there are people that are good at it. Him and Steel Panther, and because people that we can all be guilty of taking ourselves too seriously, and that sucks.
For sure. So it's nice to have some of that comic relief.
Yeah.
Well, a few other things I want to get into before we wrap it up, but you've mentioned before in other interviews about being very into Van Halen and Aerosmith and things like that back in the day, and I think your sister, you said, was like hardcore rap fan. And one of your first guitars, maybe even your first guitar, electric guitar, I think it had like the Eddie Van Halen paint job or something. I think you said was when you first started out playing music, was it always something similar to Blackberry Smoke, and that it was always Southern music, or were you ever doing something that was a little more in that vein of Van Halen, Rat, Aerosmith before you ended up doing what you're doing now?
Well, I never could really play like Eddie Van Halen or Warren DeMartini. I'm not good at that type of playing as far as soloing, playing really fast and that really aggressive. I mean, we play loud guitar rock, so more akin to Aerosmith, than Rat. But
Of course.
I love those songs, and I love to hear people play like that. I think it's such an art form, especially if it has taste, like those dudes. Those two good examples. Eddie, who is the absolute king anyway of loud rock and roll guitar, and Warren DeMartini is obviously. I think he was part of that school, but Joe Perry is who made me want an electric guitar. And I didn't even know that. I didn't know it was Joe Perry. I found an Aerosmith Rocks cassette on the ground, covered in mud, at this place where the kids used to go mud riding in my hometown. I found Hank Williams Jr. Pressure Is On and Aerosmith Rocks, and I took it home and I put it in. And I think Back in the Saddle is what I heard, and it was. If you listen to Back in the Saddle now, it doesn't sound like anything. Like it does not sound like any other song before it. It's so original because Joe was playing a 6-string bass, through a Marshall.
Oh, I did not know that. Wow.
And he's playing chords on a 6-string bass. So that's that low.
Wow.
And then there's all these little lead parts in there too. But and then so that song and Get the Lead Out. That really spoke to me, that record. And I was like, I never thought I could do, like I would hear the first Van Halen record, and it never occurred to me to want to do that. I thought, who can do that? That dude sounds like an alien, But I felt like Black Sabbath and Aerosmith and even like Zeppelin, that felt more attainable. Like, okay, I can learn how to do that. And I had one of my sister's boyfriends he taught me what a power chord is. I was already playing like some bluegrass songs, G, C, and D. He's like, no, man, you don't have to make the whole chord. You just hit these 3 strings, sometimes 2. And I was like, oh shit, okay. That's how he does it. That's how you play Iron Man. It's just these 2 notes, up in there, maybe 3 up and down the neck. And, you need somebody to give you the key. Like that's the key to unlock the rock and roll guitar is that information.
The power chords.
So it came later, because you don't just pick up a guitar and go, I'm going to learn the Almond Brothers, because that's pretty deep,
Sure.
But the progression into digging into guitar, and I got so into blues, so I was looking for bands and that was really because of the Stones, because of Love in Vain and Manish Boy and all these songs that they recorded that were blues songs, and so they sent me down and even Eric Clapton, with Crossroads, they sent me down the rabbit hole of the blues. Then you find out that all those dudes are into that, Zeppelin and the Who, even that they were taking a lot from America, from blues, and then it all just kind of coalesces, and then when I figured out, like, okay, the way to put songs and guitar playing together, because that was always the point from the beginning, was I wanted to do what my dad did, which was sing songs, play them at the same time.
Well, and what I think has been so what's probably the most fascinating thing about yourself and Blackberry Smoke is that essentially everything throughout your entire career has been done DIY. The first band to top the Billboard Country Album charts without being on a major label. And I know you've said before that there's never been any major label interest for the band, but I would imagine that once you have a number 1 album that's independent, I mean, that has to change, right? I mean, surely some of these labels had to come a knocking, right? That's such an incredible achievement to have a number 1 with no support. So did any major labels hit you guys up when that happened? Because it happened twice, right? It was Holding All the Rises and then Like an Era.
2 times. We had one meeting out in Los Angeles with a major label guy who, no need to name him, we already knew him. And so he's like, this is just a courtesy. It was a lunch, with him. And he's like, I could offer you some support from our label. If you were interested in going this route. But here's the thing. And he did it very respectfully because he's our friend. He's like, it would be a 360 deal, which is the only kind of deal people sign with young or new artists these days, which is the label gets a piece of everything you do, to which we immediately were like, nope.
It's a horrible deal. Yeah.
Not gonna do that. We've already earned past that. If we were 18, maybe. But Brit Turner at the time, he knew. He's like, I'm not going to share merch with you. He created that. He's like, I'm not. He controls it. He designs it. He controls it. He is in control of who prints it. Why would he share that with anybody? So we had already established our own touring experience, albeit small compared to, we're not playing stadiums like Taylor Swift. But anyway, the guy was laughing. He's like, I figured you'd say. We're like, no. He goes, and, there's also there would be somebody that would come in and probably try to change what you do, try to tweak it to make it more palatable to either younger audiences, whatever they thought would be the reason. Yeah. To which point we were all laughed and said, well, we're too old for that now, aren't we? And so it was basically a nice lunch, and we all agreed, like, well, it was kind of laughable, he's like, I knew you'd say no. It's just like you've come too far this way, DIY, to change it all now, and it might not even work, because we're not sex symbols, we're not cute, we're not something that. People they're not buying a ticket to come see us with our shirt off. So it's I take a lot of comfort in that whole idea that we've done this our way and we don't owe anybody a dime. I'm sitting here in a fucking tour bus that we pay for because, and it's people who want to hear us sing these songs. That's who pays for it. That's who allows us to tour as a group of people,
Well, and I think in this day and age, I mean, whether it's a record label or, these bands that think they need to go to radio and all this stuff, I mean, I guess, maybe there's still some merit to it, I guess, depending on the situation, but it's not necessary like it was back in the day. I mean, with the streaming platforms and social media and being able to sell your own merch, because I think that Merch Mountain, that's your guys' thing that you operate, right?
Well, that was Brit's company, and it's something that he built. People would come and say, "Who does your merch?" And he's like, "I do." And they're like, "Can you do ours?" And he's like, "No, my hands are full with Blackberry Smoke." But I think he heard that so many hundreds of times that he finally was like, I should probably start a side deal, doing this merchandise thing.
Yeah. So with, having things like that and having the dedicated, fan base that you guys have, I mean, it doesn't make sense for everybody and certainly, not like it did back in the day. But what is sort of interesting is that you have a European deal with Earache Records, which I thought to be kind of surprising because obviously that, they've put out a few Rival Sons albums and things like that. But I guess to me, it still is a bit of an unexpected pairing given a majority of the roster is, over the top extreme metal bands. So I found that
grindcore,
that you guys work together for Europe. How did that come about? And were you guys, I'm assuming they came to you, and was there any hesitation like, well, I don't know if we can be on the same label as, what, an all Noth Rock or something?
Well, they did come to us, and Britt and Richard actually knew Dan Tobin, he was a partner with Digby Pearson in that label. They knew him from the early days when they played metal. And so Dan is the one, and Digby also, who were like, we love your music and we'd love to help out here, because we didn't have any sort of label association in Europe at the time. And it was when the Whippoorwill had just come out, which is our touchstone. It's our best selling record. It's what most people love most in our catalog. It's their favorite. But Dan was like, we don't have to be strictly a grindcore label, or a hardcore metal label. They had already started working with Rival Sons and with and then I forget who else, but they wound up working with the Temperance Movement, that great band from the UK. And I don't think there were many people, well, nobody that likes Blackberry Smoke gave a shit. They were just like, oh, okay, well, this just means this makes it easier for us to buy your music over here. There were some super metal fans that were pissed off at Earache for signing us and Rival Sons, and I would see it on social media. They'd be like, why are you releasing this garbage? This is not metal, And I thought, well, I mean, some people are that way, they like what they like, and anything else is offensive. But that was nobody at Earache ever felt that way. They're like, well, shit, I remember Dan was like, his favorite record of the year that year was The War on Drugs, that great band from Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Like really ambient, quiet music, and I was like, oh, don't tell anybody that. They'll fucking come string you up. But he doesn't care. He's like, yeah, but I also am going tomorrow night to see Guar, so who gives a shit?
Have you seen Guar live before?
I never have, no.
Oh, I did for the first time. I think it was last summer, and luckily I was a little further back I wasn't right up front, so I didn't get covered in blood. But
yeah,
my God, what a show! I got to say, I mean, musically, I like metal. I'm not really I wouldn't say Guar is my favorite band, or I wouldn't even say they're a great band, but they are great at what they do. And my God, is it a show that you will remember forever?
That's right. That's performance art.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one last thing I want to get to quickly before we wrap this up, because I know I've taken up a lot of your time, which I greatly appreciate. But I would be remiss, and he keeps getting brought up. But of course, Brit Turner, who passed away earlier this year. I believe it was from cancer. Is that correct?
Yeah, glioblastoma, brain cancer.
Yeah, which my condolences. But when that happened, or even before, when it became clear that he wouldn't be able to perform with the band anymore, and you had to get a fill-in for him, I mean, I would imagine that it's got to be hard to continue or even want to continue the band when a guy that's been with you since day one is no longer here, or no longer, at least a part of the project, but before the passing. So was there ever any thoughts like, well, maybe we should just sit tight for a little bit, or was it like, maybe Britt said, just keep this thing rolling with or without me?
Well, he did say it, because he has a family and we're all family. And so it was pretty much agreed that, well, and Kent Arberly, who's playing drums now, he had come in and started to work with us. He was Britt's fill-in, so he became family. We've known him for years too. And I think we had all agreed, like, well, this thing it's bigger than one of us, than any one of us, so he would want it to continue. And he did, he did it until he couldn't go anymore. But he's like, he didn't want to see it stop or falter, for nothing more than the sake of his family or what we'd all worked for. So it is incredibly surreal still, because I still, it just feels like I could pick up the phone and call him. It's just so, it's weird. I know that seems ridiculous to say, but it's just hard to put into words even how odd it still feels for him to not be here. Because until that happens to you, to somebody you see just so, I mean, every day I'm sitting right across from him, more than I've seen my own family in the last 20 years. So I guess if it had happened suddenly, maybe it would have been different. But since it was a drawn out thing, he still toured for another year after he was diagnosed. And when it finally did start to really take him, that all happened pretty quickly. But that time of waiting, really, it was long, and it was sad and stressful, and for no one more than him. But it was pretty joyful too, because we toured Europe and all over the U.S. So much love for him, and I think it just shows every night that we play now that people come there, and every night, we talk about him still on stage and dedicate the show to him, and people love him. They always will.
Well, one last thing on that. Obviously, Brit's brother Richard is your bass player, and when you look at various brothers throughout music history, whether it's Van Halen or Pantera or whatever, a lot of these guys refuse to perform without their brother, or in the case of Pantera, after Dimebag was murdered, took Vinnie Paul a long time, a number of years before he wanted to get back out there. Was there, and maybe this is a better question for him, but was there ever any scenario like that with Richard where he's like, man, I don't really know if I can do this without my brother?
Well, I asked him that, and he said he would want us to continue. He would. He would be the first one at the show, no matter what happened. And I said, I know that. And the reason this might help for anybody who wondered, they were raised by an Air Force colonel. So where that comes from is that military mindset of, I don't even know how you'd put it into words, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, do your thing, do it for your brother. You know what I mean? So he never faltered, not for a second, not like, I can't do this. I can't do it without Brit. And they are the only people that had ever played together. They always played together their entire lives. And so I have the utmost respect for Richard for being able to do it. And there are nights that it's hard and he's sad, and it's tough. And we stay in. It's brought us all closer together. Even when Brit was still alive, it did. Everybody. It had been a long time, maybe since we told each other we loved each other. Or because you spend that much time in a band, you could be like, oh, I'm so fucking sick of that guy.
Right.
It's easy to do, but then something like this really makes you realize like a lot of stuff is trivial. So anyway, it's I never, when you sit down and think about it and think back 25 years ago, nobody saw this coming, but then again, I probably didn't think we'd be together this long either.
But he is on he's on the new album, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. He played all the drums on it. He hadn't been diagnosed with cancer yet then.
Is his fill-in, what would you say? Is it Kent? Is that his name?
Kent. Mm-hmm.
Is he
Kent Auberly.
Is he going to, is he staying with you guys?
I guess. Yeah. He's doing a great job. I don't know if we haven't even discussed, what our plans are for the long term. But as of right now, nobody's planning to stop.
Well, as we wrap this up, what else is going on in the world of Blackberry Smoke? I know you guys have, my God, about 1 million tour dates coming up.
Yeah.
I think some even going into next year. I think you guys are doing, what's that called? The Rock Legends Cruise. Next year. Do you like doing those cruises? I know you've done a ton of them. Do you like doing a cruise?
I do, especially now with children, because I can take my son and he gets to, see all these exotic ports and, get on water slides on cruise ships, and he gets to see people drunk and throwing up. It's pretty great. This one's going to be really cool with Alice Cooper. That'd be great.
Oh yeah, that'll be amazing. Yeah. Well, what else is going on outside of that? Anything else coming out this year?
No, not that I can think of. We just touring to promote Be Right Here, and I got like the thing with the song with Cody Jinx, and then a couple of other song things I've done with a few people that you'll be pretty surprised about. I won't tell you about it yet, though, but it'll probably come later this year.
I saw you guys also have a beer, too.
Yeah, that was one of Brit's and our manager's passions was this Blackberry Smoke uh, American lager with New Realm Brewery, and apparently people like it. I don't drink; I haven't in a long time, so I hear it's good.
What is the process of having your own beer with partnering with a brewery? Is it more of like they just they pay you to essentially license your name and you just maybe get X amount of dollars or whatever? Or is it more like an actual partnership where maybe you guys have some input on the flavor or whatever? How does that exactly work?
Well, Brit did, and Brit and a couple of the other guys who drink beer in the band, they had some input as to what they thought that that our fans would want to drink, And so it wasn't, I'm told that it's not exceptionally hoppy or, it's not like a millennial IPA, it doesn't taste like wheat berry and I don't know. I can't even think of anything to compare, but, so I'm told that it's just for our fans who like to drink beer, they like it. Again, it's really not my place to speak on it since I haven't had any alcohol in 17 years. But I used to like beer, and I figured I'd probably like it.
Well, you can get more info on the beer and all of the band's upcoming tour dates at blackberrysmoke.com. Charlie, thank you so much, man, for taking a lot of time and doing this. I really, really appreciate it, and had a great time chatting, man. Would love to do it again sometime.
Thank you, man. Good to talk to you.